All right, Amaroff, good morning. Hope you're all having a great day so far. Good to see so many familiar faces here, or faces names that I know. We're going to talk about managing strategy and execution in chaotic times. And it has been very, very chaotic times. And it's been amazing watching the companies that we're working with and how they're navigating in different directions and finding ways to thrive. And that's not true for everyone, but we're noticing some patterns of what people are doing. And we're seeing things that we've known in the past that have worked, but some different adaptations of it or some reminders of it today. And, as Sun Tzu said, from the book Art of War, one of the best strategy books, I think it's the ultimate strategy book, if you can soak into it and really understand it. But as he said, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And there are lots and lots of opportunities out there right now, incredible amounts. And you hear all the sad stories about companies, but we're seeing some real amazing stories. But it takes a bit of a different mindset and a different approach, which we'll share with you this morning. And the hard part is a lot of people kind of get their head in the clouds over the last few months because there's so much. There's all the challenges that we're having in our businesses, different changes in our lives. And in reality, people in many cases lack the clarity they need to continue to thrive and win. And I'm not judging them for it. It's hard because there's so many things going on. And in many times, it's like running a company in a booming economy versus a not booming economy. It's a different skill set, different way of thinking. You can't take things for granted. And right now, there's so many different messages, and people are wondering, should I go this way, that way, up, down? Should I be aggressive? Should I be conservative? Should I acquire businesses? Should I sell businesses? There's lots of different questions, and people are heading off in different directions, and a lot of times teams have different views of what should be done. Truth is, there's probably no right answers, but there's directionally some better answers. And our job is to keep our head above the clouds so we can see where it is we want to go and take the company in the midst of the chaos that we're in and probably will be in for a little bit. So for many of you know that, but our firm, we're focused on helping CEOs and leaders to have it all, is success in business, can create thriving, enduring businesses that endure this kind of weird stuff, and a rewarding life. And if you've heard me talk before, you know that's a big passion of mine. And it's easier said than done. And we've got experience all around the world, different companies, different cultures, and different stages of economies. That's why coming into this weird economy that we're in excites me, because I've been through them so many times by being in different markets. You see the opportunities, and it's almost fairly easy to predict who's going to come out stronger and who is not. So incredible amount of experience around the world. And our whole focus is better strategy and stronger leaders. Continually sharpen the strategy and the execution of that strategy, and then just build an unbelievably strong team. And we'll share some of that with you today. Kind of three frameworks we use the most. There'll be a fourth soon. That's my next slide. But Scaling Up is a book that I was a key driver behind. And it's how do you scale and grow the company consistently? Your Oxygen Mask First, which is about how do you scale and grow yourself and your team. So if the first one's on business, second one's on yourself more so. And then Top Grading and the book Who that's related is about how do you continually to only add A players to your team and build a team so strong that it probably doesn't seem fair to other people. The next book that I'm working on right now is called The Four Forces of Growth. I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today because it relates to this kind of economy. I wasn't planning for this economic downturn or this weird virus thing, but this is a book I started working on almost a year ago, and I'll share that model because it relates a lot to these times. So we've got an amazing team, and if you look at it, Dean and Tim do a lot of the work around strategy, better strategy, strategic planning and execution. Michelle and Kristen, they both work on the people side, stronger leaders, both in terms of top grading and leadership education and growing the capability of the awesome people that you have. In all the work that we find, if the leaders can't scale, the company won't grow, right? That is what this is about. And in these times, if the leaders can't adapt, the companies won't survive in some cases. Some businesses are fine, but in a lot of cases, there's a great need to adapt. And that's what we're talking about today. My favorite quote from Collins, and by the way, if you haven't seen the Jim Collins event that we have coming up on Tuesday, we've got an amazing opportunity with him, 2.5 hours with the master researcher. He's an amazing human being, phenomenal research that is very relevant to these times, very relevant. You can find out about that on the newsletter. You've probably seen it, but if you haven't signed up, it's designed for you to bring your team. It will be awesome. But my favorite quote from him, and it's the quote in the hallway when you walk into his office, is the greatness is not a function of circumstance, it turns out. It's largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. And that's what we're seeing today. People that are choosing to thrive during these times do. They have the hustle and the focus on the things that are actually making a difference. And by the way, there's a couple articles on our blog that relate to the stuff we're talking about today, the 4 forces of growth, and stepping over nickels to pick up dollars, which we'll be talking about a little bit more if you want to read a little bit more. So here are the 9 things that we're seeing and recommending with the companies that we're working with. And I'm going to go through them one by one with a little bit of thought behind it, some examples and context. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions if there's any questions that people want to ask, as long as we don't run out of time. But so the first one, oh, by the way, I'm recording this. So if there's anything I'm sharing, I'm going to share things in generic terms to keep it confidential. And if we have time for Q&A at the end, I just ask that you do the same. All right, aces in their places, the best teams win. This is a basic. Everybody knows it, yet few people do it. And this is super important. And you know what I've realized through this COVID thing, because almost all of our clients are doing exceptionally well, given the context of their industry. It's like shockingly well. We have one that really is hurting, but they are in a direct tourism business, and that stopped in the city of Vancouver, and they have other locations around North America. That went to 0, and there's almost nothing they could do. And I feel for them. But aside from them, almost all the rest of them are doing well or very well. So aces in their places is the thing that we're seeing, is that people that have, our clients have exceptionally strong teams, are stronger than normal and definitely stronger than when we start with them. And we're seeing how those teams are just crushing it. Most of them are highly engaged and just as productive when they worked at home than when they were in the office, although many of them wanted to get back in the office. But having those spectacular teams really showed. And you know what we realized in our clients is that our philosophy around people is closer to a professional sports team than it is a pickup league. If you look at hockey, people will go to the local rec center and a bunch of guys or gals will get together and play hockey for fun. And that's how a lot of businesses operate. Hey, you want to come play? Let's play together, i.e., let's work together. In ours, it's like we've got scouts, we've got tryouts, we've got training camps. We have all of these things, and only the best get to stay. And only even the best of the best get to play in the companies we work with. And it's a philosophy we have. It's all about A players. And you know, a quote from Collins, if you want to be a great company, you need 90% of your key seats filled with the right people, 90. And that's the number that we also target. 90% A players in the company is the aspiration. So far, we've got 2 clients there. One had 50 employees, one had about 450 employees. It's hard work, but the dividends are amazing. Never mind the people you get to work with. And in times like this, the people who have the brain power and the work ethic to pivot well, usually the profit shows up too. So 90% is the target that we aspire to, even if you get 70 or 80. Most people run, from we've seen, 25 to 30%. Again, that's more like recreational pickup hockey versus a real serious team. So we call, you got to be an A to stay. So in that right-hand box, that's the goal there. Those are aces. They live the values, i.e. they're not disruptive to the culture. They actually add value to the culture, and they consistently produce amazing results. They often impress you. They delight you. You feel just thrilled they're on your team. The Bs, they're good people. They fit the culture. They're just you know, moderate producers, and you can't consistently rely on them. They're good. They aren't great. And then down below the line, the red box is where we get in trouble. We got the Cs. They don't live the values. They don't deliver. They usually get cleaned up fairly fast. But these ones are the problems, the toxic As. They're high-performing jerks. They're high-performing people who don't fit the culture. You know, we just had one leave one of our companies in a very critical role, like very critical role. But there's this like sigh of relief in the organization because they were so toxic. Even though they were exceptional, they were toxic. So we drive real hard into companies we work with, and these times this is very, very important to make sure that you're stacking the deck with A's. It makes our lives easier, it's easier to manage, and it's where a lot of people miss the boat. It's the one thing that we crank up probably the most in every company that we work with. It's very, very important. So here's the exercise to help you do it. If you're not doing this with your team, this is the tool. You take each of your direct reports, and as a CEO, probably your whole org, or all the leaders in the org, and you rate them based on that, toxic A, C, B, and A rating scales, why they're there and what you're going to do about it. Even for your A's, you got to keep helping them grow. You've got to keep them engaged and challenged or resourced so they don't destroy themselves, which happens sometimes. So going through and doing this talent, most of our clients, we do this every quarter, some every 6 months, but every quarter is the best rhythm. These are your biggest assets or investments. You want to make sure you get the return, and the high performers need the nurturing. And in this case, the A's, promote them or give them more resources or challenges. B's, help them to get into that A spot. Sometimes they need a performance improvement plan. Sometimes you got to change their role or give them training or a different manager, who knows? But they're kind of floundering in mediocre land, and we want them to be amazing. And most people are an A, it's something in some way. And then toxic A's and C's, make sure they're written up. Make sure they've got their real feedback and their last chance. And then coach them out, i.e. help them to gracefully find a job somewhere else where they're better suited, or release them respectfully. Remember, unless they're doing something immoral, you guys are the one that hired them. It's your mistake, not theirs. You didn't scrutinize enough to get the right people. And that's why Michelle and Kristen on our team do so much top grading training and actually run the interviews for all of our clients for their most senior roles to make sure we don't let the donkeys into the company. And we've had way, way too many, and the cost is unbelievable. Never mind the emotional cost, the financial cost, particularly of those toxic A's. They are the horror stories that I didn't even want to talk about. So here's the questions for you to think about on this one. What actions do you need to take, yourself and with your team, to move towards 90% A players? You don't have to get to 90. Maybe you'll be awesome at 50 or 60 or 70. But who do you have to replace or promote or demote? Or maybe you got to split their role, or just give the honest feedback and reset expectations, which is where we start, that last one. Letting them know, hey, hey, Dan, it ain't good enough. You need to step up and get to a better level. Good to see you there, Dan. All right, next thing, double the debate. There's a lot of stuff to figure out. People are often running around sprinting so much that, one, we're not aligning around strategic decisions. Two, we're not actually getting the best brains focused on things that matter and making the best decisions. So a majority of companies that we work with have what we call a debate deficit. There's a whole bunch of debates that haven't happened. And as a result, there's that lack of alignment, or we're just making horrible decisions. So interesting, over this COVID thing, we had to run a planning session with one of my clients, 24 people, doing it virtually. And thanks to my team, we found a way to do it outstandingly well. 24 people virtually is not easy, but we found other technologies and ways to make it work. But what's interesting is that and I hadn't run this for this client for a while, is that they had almost no debate time on the agenda. And we went through and worked through it, and we ended up opening up and finding ways to have it. But as a contrast, I've got another one of my clients where we generally debate for somewhere between 15 and 22 hours every quarter. Like, they're crazy long days. We've had 2-day meetings where on the first day we start at 8, and we normally finish 8, sometimes 9, sometimes 10 p.m. And what we've realized now, we restructured the meeting to just have huge debates. But this went from a fractured team going different directions to being a highly aligned team that gets along way better because there's not all those lingering debates. There's not all those skeletons in the closet. We just keep pushing them onto the table and grinding through the tough conversations. So not only do you get alignment, you generally make way, way better decisions. And the results are proving it. So, in the second to last session, we had 22 hours of debate in one meeting. I know it sounds insane. And it was really effective. They needed it, really, really needed it. Just a funny story. My first time I ever had a meeting with them, we had a 1-day meeting they wanted. And the CEO is one of these CEOs that really likes to go quick. So I said, okay, sure, I can do a day. Well, at about 8 p.m. at the end of that day, this group had a massive debate deficit. 8 p.m., we're like, okay, well, we're going to cancel dinner plans. We're going to order dinner in, and we'll have to stop by 11. And then they said, and I had to be back in the city. We're outside, an hour and a half outside of Vancouver. I had an 11 a.m. meeting the next morning. So I had not packed stuff to stay, but we figured that out. And I ended up staying over. We started again at 5:30 or 6 a.m. Yeah, and finished at 10 a.m. in time for me to get to my 11:30. So the point of it is we did almost a 14-hour day, and then we did another 4 hours the next morning because they needed it so bad. They're crazy, and they also get crazy results. So where's your debate time? Like, where do you have enough? I mean, ideally, there's an hour every week for real debate, like taking one or two topics and grinding through them and hearing different perspectives and working it out. In a monthly meeting, there should be 4, 5, 6 hours of it if you do a full day. And on a quarterly, a notable chunk of it, especially if you're not aligned and your strategy isn't dialed or isn't producing. So the remedy now for a lot of people is to have enough of it. And maybe you've got it. If you do, awesome. But consistent growth requires making a few decisions very, very well. And those are the ones you need to spend the time on. Not what color is the office wall going to be. Not who's going to sit beside each other in a new office layout. I mean, that's worth about 75 seconds. But the real things that impact customers, existing customer satisfaction, new customer acquisition, or things that really hardcore impact the business. So figuring out what to debate is the key question. That's, again, I mentioned, it's the highest value things that truly impact the business. Here's a simple tool that we have it's a draft of a new tool that will be in my new book. But it's debating ideas. So once they're prioritized, and it's basically, okay, what's the data we have and the data we need? 14Xer is an expert. This is out of your oxygen mask. Someone who's been there and done that 14 times before, a master of whatever you're trying to figure out. What's the master we have and what's the master we need? Way too many people home bake. Way too many people try to figure it out. Go tap into a competitor who's mastered it in a different region. Tap into an expert consultant, whatever it happens to be. What's the test that we have done and what's the test that we need to do? And then what is the debate that we have already had, but the debate we need to have? And then the action, and then the questions for the group or team to continue. You can make your own, but this is a starting point for a solid debate. So the question for you, what do you need to do to get to 22 or 44 hours of debate a quarter in your different meetings? And maybe it's 12. I'm putting concepts out here. But what do you need? And maybe you have enough debate time, but if not, what do you need to do to get to 12 or 22 or 44 hours of debate? And it's not with everyone. It's with the people who are really good at figuring things out. All right, next one. Only goals that really count. This is a pet peeve of mine. And if you want to see the steam start coming out of my ears, this is one of the reasons. There's SMART goals. And shockingly, in most of the companies we work with, their goals are not SMART. They're far from it. And in reality, they're kind of mushy goals. By the way, the A players normally have SMART goals. It's the rest that don't. But specific, measurable, the acronym. It's really powerful. But we call it SMARTs. We've modified it, and we put a $ on the end. And it's because too many people have passion projects at work that they're attached to, and they don't matter. Now, we don't want to go and tell people they don't matter. But it's like, show me the money. Right? If you remember from the movie Jerry Maguire, show me the money. I'm not going to sing how he was doing it. Was it Cuba Gooding Jr., I think? But it's about what is the actual dollar impact of your idea. And the number doesn't have to be right. But if it's not going to hit the bottom line, whether it's net or EBITDA, or have a notable impact on SG&A, or you can prove a return on capital, it's a passion project. This is business. It's a numbers game. Show me the numbers. Show me the numbers. And a lot of cases, we get people and put a range. We call this hockey math or bar math. Plus or minus 20, 30% is cool. It's rough back of the napkin thinking. But if you've got this wonderful idea, and for example, one company we work with, they're doing about 120 million a year of revenue. And they got this, they want to make it one of their quarterly priorities. People are real, yeah, we got to do this. We got to do this. We go and do the math on it. It's going to impact the bottom line by $5,000. Now, they're in the States, it's $5,000 US, but still, $5,000 aligning the company and the executives around a goal, That is a horrible decision. Now, it's not, it shouldn't happen. Somebody should. It sure as heck should not be at the executive level for $5,000. So $5,000 upside, not good. So we went and found another idea that had 250 grand in the short term and 2.5 million in the medium term. Okay, that made it the list. The point is, people prioritize based on how they feel, but we've got to get the CFO thinking in there and saying, if there's not enough money, we don't dedicate the resources. Same thing with existing projects. There's a lot that should be killed off because they really don't matter. Or if they happen, let's let them happen organically 2 or 3 layers down in the organization. It's okay. We just don't want to waste our time. So the discipline is with their goals to get people to come up with the dollar impact, especially at the company level of the goals. So the question for you to consider on this one, what do you need to do to ensure your team selects goals with smarts? And it is hard. In these sessions, I have to continually get down to the tangible outcome. And some of the companies that are just get going, we gradually dialed it in and get it tighter and tighter and tighter. But outcome orientation, i.e. SMART goal, and how does it touch the financials? Okay, growth over improvement. And this is what I call the seduction of streamlining. A lot of people love to streamline and improve process. It's a wonderful way to get some work done and maybe improve your business, but I'll give you an example. So one of the companies that I've worked with in the US, they've since sold the business for just over $1 billion, which was amazing exit for them, $1 billion Canadian dollars. So what we did in that company, it ran, roughly, it ran 11, 12% EBITDA level. But we could have run it at 15, but we didn't. We consciously chose growth over maximizing profitability. We chose growth over improvement because growing the company at that speed would improve the value of the company because we were bigger more than it would being a small business with a higher percent of going to the bottom line. So basically, we ran it a little bit loose so we could grow faster, right? And it's a key point because some people think by dialing a business in and optimizing every single thing, you make a better business. Well, you have a better run business, but often it restricts growth because the energy is going to fixing things versus growing it. And the CEO's job is to balance both. So in my new book called The 4 Forces of Growth, I'll give you a quick walkthrough of the concepts, but it helps you to be aware of it, first of all, and then decide. So I'm, normally on an airplane almost every week, like I know some of you are as well. And, Mark, I think you used to live on an airplane as well, from what I can see there, and same with Casey, I see you there as well. Good to see you, actually, and Johannes, and many of you. Anyways, so a CEO is kind of like a pilot. They're both fighting forces of gravity to keep an plane in the air. And with a business, we do the same thing. And, we've got on an airplane, we've got the lift that lifts the company up. And in our case, in business, it's actually an opportunity focus, which I'll get to in a moment. And we got gravity that pulls the plane down, just like we have problems that sucks us down. So in the model I converted from a business context, it's such a simple model, is that we've got opportunities to take us up, problems take us down. Courage to take us forward, fear takes us backwards, just like the dynamics of an airplane. And you get growth only when you focus on opportunities and have courage to pursue those opportunities. Those are opportunities for growing existing customers, adding new customers, new products, new services, new markets, right? It's basically going and bringing in more streams of revenue. It could be acquisition as well if you want on inorganic growth. Down in the bottom, we've got improvement, where you have problems and you have the courage to fix them. And improvement is a very nice thing, and it's good. It needs to be done in the business, but way too many people get sucked into the problems because they never stop. But if you only fix problems, you will improve or streamline your business, and it helps your costs and your margins and all those good things. But it doesn't create growth. Only growth creates growth. Improvement creates improvement. On the other side of the equation, you got analysis. That's, you're thinking things through, which a degree of it is important. In times like this, we don't have time to analyze too much. We got to get into action and do things, but we do still have to analyze. And then when you've got fear and you're problem-based, you get agony. And that's where the mental health starts to kick in. That's where organizations start to die and rot from the inside out, because people are just looking fearfully at problems, but not doing anything about it. So the model that we're really trying to look at is you got to decide, where is your energy going? Shockingly, the companies we know that are thriving have a lot of energy on the green, on growth. The CEO and leaders are thinking about new markets, new opportunities, new products, or enhancing what they've got with their existing customers, but trying to grow what they have, not just streamline it. If we put this into roles in the company, the CEO, the best CEOs of growing companies have a huge portion of their time in that growth box. And if you don't have the right rest of the team, you're probably busy in the other boxes, but that's not a way to grow your company. It's very difficult. So down at the bottom in the improvement, you got your COO, operations, dialing in operations. CFO is the analyst, challenging, counterbalancing the CEO's strategic thinking and looking at the real costs and potential, opportunities. And then you got audit, legal, and compliance, which is it's necessary. They are covering our butts and trying to keep us from getting into bad places. So as a CEO, what I'd have you think about is, what percentage of your time do you have in that growth box? And how much do you have in improvement? You need enough analysis to make good decisions, and you need enough time in agony to learn your lessons. That's fine. But for most people, they're way too much down in the bottom right corner and not enough in the top right. So thinking about it for a second, how much time do you think you and your team both should have in the growth box? This is absolutely critical. And the way I look at it is, I'd leave a couple of points of profit on the ground in order to have more growth. For many companies, you can't, you want to ideally have both. You need to have good profitability. But if you're too focused on improvement, there's no energy dedicated to the growth strategy. So what do you need to do to ensure you and your team spend the right amount of your time and their budgets, the capital, on growth? And really go and calibrate this. I'm going to be doing more case studies and research around this for my book that'll come out next year, but it's super important. It is one of the biggest factors I have seen. Wherever the CEO and team is putting their energies is what they get. And unconsciously, people usually have way too much in improvement, not enough in growth. And in unstable times like this, new customer and new opportunity acquisition is massive. Okay, feel the data points, basically getting out into the front. I call this playing office, and I get a little bit fired up about it sometimes. But way too many people try and run their business from their office. That's not where the value is created, maybe unless you're acquiring. And it's not where the action happens. The CEOs that are most in touch with their businesses are spending time in the business, touching it, feeling it, smelling it, hearing it, all of those things. So for example, I was out at a winery on the weekend. And what I noticed at the winery is that it was very uptight. It wasn't fun. People were almost had fear in their eyes. It was a horrible customer experience at an amazing winery up in Osoyoos outside of Vancouver. Well-known, highly respected, good wines. Well, I'm curious, so I asked, and I said, hey, why does it feel so tight in here? And I know there's regulations, and the lady goes, see that woman over there? Yeah, she's from head office. I'm like, aha, now I understand. Well, I'm kind of from head office in the company that I work with too. But somehow the CEO or executive or someone in charge of compliance or safety or health and safety made a decision, enforced that decision, but failed to see how the decision was executed. And it was executed in a way that killed the spirit of their team and had them totally fear-based. So the guests ended up with a crappy experience. They had a beautiful intent. But unfortunately, I've been in a boardroom way too many times when we make what we think is good decisions, and then you go witness the execution in the field, and it's horrific. People take it verbatim. People actually don't like it at all and fight against it, or we don't realize the mess we're making. So it's like with any good experiment, you do the experiment and then you watch the results. Well, you can't watch the results from a report. You can't watch the results from your office. You got to be there, see it. Sorry. So a great management theory called this management by walking around. Was it Drucker or somebody else? Management by walking around. So you got to be out in the business, touching it, feeling it, seeing it, and picking up the data firsthand. Reports hide way too much stuff. especially because they're crafted by executives. So you got to be talking to employees, customers, vendors, and competition. Again, some of the companies we work with are masters of this. We had a call recently with the #1 competitor of one of our clients, and we started talking about a joint venture of how we could work together. It was fascinating. But the CEO just picked up the call and said, "Hey, here you're doing some good stuff. Let's chat." We ran a 4-hour session, learning from each other and finding a way to collaborate. And if not, we're both learning at the same time. And it's a very, very smart move in this particular case. So you can't play office. You can't win by playing office. You got to be on the field where the game is being played and be a part of it so you can see it firsthand. And it'll help you make way better decisions and see things. So how many data collecting conversations should happen every week for you, your team, front lines? And this is important. And it's so hard to do because there's so many reasons to be in the office. And one of the CEOs I work with, she calls it windshield time. Being in a car or a truck side by side with a key partner, having time to go and see what's going on and talk. And we know what happens when we do this. We just somehow think that our offices are more important. And they have a space, but they're not near as important as being in the front lines. By the way, if you don't have a physical business and we got some SaaS clients, software as a service clients, and they're jumping into the call center. They're sitting in the pit of the call center, listening to calls. Sometimes they take calls. They want to be right there in it, seeing it, feeling it, experiencing it. All right, variable targets and budgets. This is on the financial side because it's anyone's guess. We know we're in a challenging economy. How challenging? For how long? How does it impact your business? There's a lot of variables. It's a heck of a lot clearer now. But no matter what, we've got a new model as part of my new book called ABCs. And it's a different way of looking at it. Generally, the plans or budgets we set today could change so much by September or December. It's very dangerous to lock them like we would in a stable market and make our investments or our hiring decisions sort of with a 1-year time horizon. So here's the model that we've actually started to use, and we will in the next round of budgeting and capital allocation. Is the B is your baseline. It's the base budget that you're comfortable with. And that's around people and hiring, projects you invest in, CapEx you invest in, and your SG&A or overhead that you invest in. And that's the plan that you work with. But normally people always have a backup plan or a reduced plan. We've got to be prepared to either accelerate and step up if we can find new opportunities or back off. And you need that flexibility in the minds of your people. And it's more of a opportunistic, volatile market perspective of being able to step up or step down depending on what's needed. And it's basically, in many sophisticated companies will forecast or reforecast sometimes weekly or monthly. It's in the train of thought there, but basically it's leaving room for flexibility. So for example, one of our clients was planning to hire 50 new people as part of their growth strategy. By the way, they're an industry that's down dramatically, but they're up dramatically because the team found a brand new market and a brand new opportunity because of this COVID thing. And it's so good, it's almost scary. And we're splitting the financials out, saying this is our core business, this is our COVID business, so that we don't take for granted that some of this COVID business could disappear very quickly. But it's going so well that we are actually going to hire an additional almost 50 people. So instead of close to 50, it'd be close to 100. And a lot of them driving sales, not all, but a lot driving sales, so that we can maximize and fully maximize on this. And the only difference that we're doing is that we're hiring them knowing that if the opportunity continues, they stay. If not, we're going to try and keep all the best A players, but they might end up being a shorter term workforce based on this. So it's kind of a scaling up and scaling down workforce. So we're popping into accelerated mode and we're going to push it as hard as we can, but we'll very quickly, because we're doing planning on a monthly basis, we could drop back to baseline, or we could go down to conservative and have flexibility and setting those expectations with the people too. The main thing is an annual budget is very dangerous. A 3-year plan is a beautiful intent, but we have to be able to quickly change those main line items in the budget and our spend in particular up or down in this kind of market. So how can you set your people, profit, SG&A, and CapEx budgets with checkpoints and ABC scenarios? Maybe yours is monthly, maybe it's quarterly. But how can you prepare for different scenarios that play out? Because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. And if we make the wrong bet, we need to change fairly quickly in this kind of market and preserve our cash and keep our company strong. All right, R&D daily, not just the no-brainers. And this is about continuing to experiment. Sometimes companies get really tight and focused and like don't want to waste any money, manage costs so tightly, and they stop being creative. So they basically take a linear approach. And a linear approach in this kind of market can be dangerous depending on your business. Maybe it's fine. So, example is with restaurants. It's fascinating. The linear approach is to try and optimize it and dial it in. But you, like I, have probably seen many restaurants that have actually taken, and because they can have so much space inside, there's a cafe near me right here. And what they have done is that they now have patio space, but they've taken the patio space across all of the other businesses in their strip. They're kind of like in a retail strip mall. And they're using the parking lot as patio spaces. They managed to get that approved. So they've gone from, I would say it's probably normally a 50 or 60 seat place. They've been able to sustain that by expanding on the patio. Thankfully, there's covered patios out front, and if it's a nice day, they can use the one out back. But the main thing is it's about trying new things and not just sticking to linear. And again, this is out of the new book, The Four Forces of Growth, and this is how you evaluate opportunities. And I'll get into the R&D piece, but we look at all of our ideas. A big part of the work we do in our strat planning sessions is help people to evaluate the quality of their idea. Remember before I said the dollar signs, right? What's the dollar impact? This takes it another level. And we're looking at the likelihood of success with this idea and the dollar impact. Because some things might have a big dollar impact, but they're not very likely to happen. So I call this pennies, nickels, and dollars. Down in the bottom here is the pennies. Low likelihood and low impact. But we don't want to waste any time even thinking about those. Up here in the nickels, they're high likelihood, but low impact. You'll pick up a few nickels. Those are great things to delegate to other people. Executives should not be talking nor thinking about them, but those are great projects for other people to work on. The dollars are the logical things that end up in our plans, if we're smart. High likelihood of success, high impact. They're no-brainers. We should do those. So those normally end up getting executed. But the real opportunities in a lot of companies, these R&D dollars. And these are things, and by the way, the dollars, it says you lead. Like we need to lead those things, we often do. It's pretty logical. But the R&D dollars are lower likelihood, but high impact. These are the ones that can be game changers and huge impact on a business. But a lot of logical thinkers don't spend enough time. The real creative CEOs who work with sometimes spend a bit too much time. But it's, what can you do? Like we got one of our clients, they're 10 years into a project in this, and they allocate, probably $100,000 a year to it. It will reduce their product cost by about 50%. It'll chop their product cost in half. Through some R&D and they're really, really close 10 years in. That's the type of stuff that everyone has something, if we could, but a lot of people initially wipe those ideas out and don't do them because they're too hard or not short-term benefit. And so as CEOs, our job is to try and find those things and make sure we continually invest in these things that would be absolute home runs and huge, huge impact on our business, but not today. And again, the question is, do we spend 10% of our time and money there, 4%, 1%, whatever it is, always having a budget for some of that stuff and testing those things to see if we can find a way to basically get those amazing home runs because they have a huge impact. They're just real hard. And not just to stick on those easy dollars that a lot of people do. So kind of the summary on this, if we're going back up into that opportunity box, right? Opportunities encourage equals growth. Within the ideas we have for growth, we only want to focus on dollars and R&D dollars, and then we got to figure out, well, what's the mix? It might be logical to have 80% of your energy on the dollars, or 85 or 90, and then 10 or 15 on those R&D ideas for the future that could really create home runs. Like a real estate developer that we work with. There's a few pieces of land that we have already identified that they want. They're not able to get them. They might not get them for 5 or 10 years, but they are going to continue to try and get those and keep investing in things to make those things happen, because those would be game changers for them in the market that they're in. So forget the pennies, delegate the nickels, and have the energy invested in the dollars and the R&D dollars in whatever proportion seems right for you. So how can you ensure there's enough investment in chasing those R&D dollars? Obviously, the dollars, you're probably doing it, or I hope you're doing it. But you have enough in the R&D dollars, enough in a way. And again, generally, the CEOs we work with have a hand in it. They're doing some things to help bring that along, because that's their passion or their expertise, but they just don't let it get too far ahead. People get excited about R&D, and often in some companies they would be way too much. But generally, it could use a little bit more. All right, iterate and win. Realigning weekly and monthly, which you probably are doing yourself and hearing about. But if we look at generally in the planning models that we use, and I know lots of you use similar models, the ones of you that I know, but we've got a quarterly, there's long-term vision, but quarterly offsite review. We've got a monthly strategic meeting, a weekly tactical, daily check-in. Those rhythms are all really good. But the key point is, how often are you recalibrating your plans? Because things are changing. So if you take the earlier concepts, like we're getting more data from what we're hearing and experiencing in the front lines of our business, we're experimenting on other things, and we're bringing it all together. And how do we bring it into a forum and really continue to iterate our plans? So one of the companies, actually a few of the companies we work with, we're really seriously reflecting monthly. I'm not a part of the weeklies, but I know many of them are weeklies where they're tweaking things based on what's happening and how are we doing and how do we win over this next week. But on a monthly basis, in many companies, we're reconsidering what we'd almost call our quarterly plans. And it's not a quarterly planning session. We're saying, okay, here's where we're at on the company goals. What's working, what's not, and then what do we got to do to continue to win? And we've had a few goals that get dropped in the middle of the quarter, more than normal, because we've realized they're not relevant or they're not going to work and add the value expected. So how do you make sure you have enough time to look at your plans and truly iterate them? And now when it's a bit more chaotic, one of the questions that we're often saying is, okay, great. So what is the clear deliverable for next month? And not a lot of people have that. But when we take a look at the goals and say, breaking it down into those chunks, it helps people to focus. And again, and to slightly tweak their thinking based on what you're learning. You guys, it's not rocket science, but the monthly kind of allowing things to iterate on a monthly basis seems to be helping, rather than monthly just being, hey, what's your logical next step? It's almost zooming out a little bit and saying, hey, how might we change our thinking or our approach here so we can stay on track? And so how can you have a real understanding of progress, ideally weekly and monthly, and iterate those plans and actions? The favorite thing I have, especially with virtual, it's easy, is we have what people have committed to on the screen. And when we do it, there's the company level and there's the individual leader level. But just having them fill out what the deliverable is for the next month and going through as a group, making sure it makes sense. Getting back into that debate time is that we would debate, okay, Kevin says, on this company goal of XYZ, by the end of July, here's what he's going to deliver. Some people might have some input. They might have some different perspectives based on what they know or their involvement in it. The main thing is hard look at what you've committed to and what's the next step in making sure it's relevant. Okay, last one. And I it's almost like I shouldn't even have to have this one in here, but it's the basic. And there's a lot of assumptions in our thinking that people are covering this off. And this is really having a clear plan. And it's the absolute basic. So in scaling up, there's that thing called the one-page strategic plan. All of our clients use it. I think all of my clients use it. There's a couple, except for some that we don't do strategy with. But it's such a basic template to align what our goals are. And in times like this, we just got to make sure we've got the rallying cry or the vision part of it nailed down. People need something to hold on to in turbulent times, right? They need that North Star or that Southern Cross that they focus on to help give them a vision and some calm and some peace of mind of knowing where they're going. Fortunately, leaders get really busy and so busy doing their job that they don't spend enough time reinforcing and selling that vision to give people that calmness and clarity that they need. And there's short-term rallying cries that people can have too, about we're going to take this mountain, we're going to accomplish this goal, whatever it happens to be. That's why quarterly themes can be really, really powerful. But what is your team connected to, and what is your predominant message aside from all the madness around us? Who are we? Where are we going? What are we going to deliver in the next 90 days? How are we going to celebrate it in the next 90 days? And those basics of leadership make a big difference right now. Again, the companies that we see thriving, man, do they have rallying cries. Wow, are they focused, and they're celebrating every chance they can get. So just out of the scaling up methodology, you've got the long-term BHAG, again, Southern Cross or North Star for companies, 3 to 5 year plan, annual plans, quarterly plans. And that way people can just stay focused. Again, I've mentioned, and monthly iterations on the quarterly plans that we talked about today. So if you don't have this, it's an absolute no-brainer. And if you don't have the plan defined, people make up their own plans, and they often go in divergent directions, and they often focus on what they're passionate about, even though it might not be the most valuable thing for the company. And that's where we think about, is if you're not, the job of a leader is to create leaders. And if you're not leaving a trail of leaders, you're a follower. We have to forget our job is not just to manage a business. It's to lead these people and to have the vision and work on the strategies to help the business succeed in the future and help them to see it. People need it. Like, even some of the best executives I know need to have that vision and to be reminded of it. That's why, as part of a quarterly planning meeting, we go back to the vision all the time to reground in it who we are and where we're going and how we'll win, and then go and do the work. So the alignment piece is an output of this. And remember, again, from scaling up, it's 1% vision, 99% alignment. We want to have a good vision and great goals, but getting people aligned to it makes them feel good. And if I go back to that winery example, they are a great business, but people are aligned to compliance and cleanliness, which is important because there's lots of regulations, but they also need to be aligned to delivering on customer experience so people feel loyal to the brand and want to continue to work with them. So on this point, the question for you is, how can you ensure your team feels part of your vision and has a clear rallying cry to rally around? Like, what do you got to do to resell? Do you have your 7-page PowerPoint that you're sharing, every week or every month? Do you when you address your whole company, weekly or monthly, which I hope you're doing, when you address your whole company, do you have those same slides? And you should be presenting this vision again and again and again to the point where people start doing the script for you, and maybe they start laughing at you or laughing with you. People need it, and you gotta continue to resell it. Same thing for some of your customers. Some of your customers, you gotta resell the value prop and remind them of the great work you're doing in the right way. But an example of the company I shared before that sold for $1 billion, which was an amazing experience. But we had a very clear vision of that company, and we had the flywheel that the CEO had picked up from his experience with Jim Collins. And in the whole transaction of selling that business, we would always go back to the next buyers. Here's the vision of where we're going. Here is the flywheel that's going to get us there. And here's the 1-page plan of how we break it down and execute it throughout the company. And that became the answer to almost every single question. Went back to the flywheel, the vision of the 1-page plan. It was unbelievable. We broke it down so simply and repeated it again and again and again and again and again. And same thing with the team. Again and again and again. But everybody knew and understood the flywheel. Everyone knew and understood their version of the 1-page plan based on their division. It's not rocket science, it's repetition and discipline that helps these things to come alive. Otherwise, again, people get lost in the clouds. We want them to be focused on what matters. So in summary, the things that we're seeing that are really making a big difference in the chaos is aces in their places, just building a stronger team. And I call it, who's the team you want to go to war with? And tough economies are like going to war conceptually. I don't have war experience. But having an unbelievable team that you're thrilled and know that you've got each other's backs. Double the debate, take those smart people and spend more time debating what matters most. The things that really impact your business. Make sure that the goals have smarts, i.e. that you know the dollar impact of the goal so you don't have your team wasting time on passion projects. Growth over improvement. How much of your energy for you and your leadership team or executive team do you want to dedicate to growth? And don't get seduced into streamlining and improvement too much. You need to do it. It has to happen. But you As a leader, if you spend too much time there, you won't grow as much. Feel the data points. Are you out in the front lines talking to customers, vendors, employees, customers, really feeling it and not letting filtered reports help you to make your decisions? It's really dangerous. Management by walking around. Variable targets, have your ABCs baseline, but opportunity to accelerate or to get down more conservative based on it. So basically flexible budgets, almost like a quarterly budget process. R&D daily, keep investing in those things that have a major benefit long run, even though they might not work. We got to keep testing those because they are huge game changers, and don't just take the low hanging fruit. Iterate and win, just weekly and monthly, looking at your plans and tweaking and changing, and obviously keeping people focused so they don't forget. And then just aligning it on the strategy, going back to your one-page plan, having a clear plan of how we're going to win in this whole thing. Again, these are not rocket science, but they're things that do slip a lot. And we need to make sure that people are doing these things. It increases your chances of winning dramatically. So kind of summary, it's all about basics. It is not rocket science, but when we get so busy and get our head in the clouds, some of these basics slip, and then we wonder why we don't get the results that we want. And there's lots of people killing it out there. And in order to be one or continue being one, some of these things you've heard here are going to help you. Some you're like, yeah, I got that already, or it doesn't matter. And in the end, it's about being on your business so that you can have the right strategic thinking to adapt quickly and win. And that's what I've seen out there. And it doesn't matter what industry you look at, there's people who have adapted shockingly well, like impressively well. And other people are like standing there like a deer in the headlights. And whatever their reason is, I'm not judging them. I'm just, that's their reality, or maybe they've got a different strategy. But people that are adapting are doing exceptionally well. So I got a couple minutes here if there's any questions. If you have any questions, you can throw them into the chat. And I'm happy to take a few questions here. Just go click on the Q&A button. So if there's any questions, I can answer those. Otherwise, it would be an absolute miracle to be done early. That would be awesome. So anyone have any question, feel free to ask it. I'll stay on for a couple minutes after. I'll just stop the recording in a minute. You can reach us at lawrenceandco.com. Myself or my team are all, you can get to us through there. And the final thought is out of my book, Your Oxygen Mask First. There's no in between with leadership. Either it slowly destroys your life or it forces you to get stronger. You could change this to, experiences like this virus thing. Many people are going back and hitting the books and getting smarter and getting stronger and fully embracing the opportunities. And then there's people who are kind of turtling and not. So this is, I love these things. I love economic downturns, love it. Our clients normally thrive. Our business booms because people that didn't think they needed help realize they do. But there's lots of opportunities. And if we can see how this is good for us and embrace it, then we will go and get ahead of it. We'll get proactive and make awesome things happen in our business. And we'll look back and be grateful for this, a bit of a shakeup that we had, and notice how we became 10, 20, 30% more effective as a leader. So I've got one question here, and let's see. Yep. So there's a question here from is it George or Jorge? It's how to manage those leaders that don't want to plan anything right now due to uncertainty. Ooh, that would be an interesting debate. Yeah, I mean, you can create short-term plans. Like, you need a plan for the day, you need a plan for the week, and probably for the month. But yeah, let me think. How would I get someone who doesn't want to plan? Someone who doesn't want to plan. I almost can't fathom it. How can you not want to plan? I can understand people not wanting to make long-term commitments. Absolutely. Because long-term commitments can be scary. One of the things that we take people to is the idea out of Great by Choice with Jim Collins, which is bullets, not cannonballs. What is a little experiment that we can try that's a small, low-risk experiment, so we're not locking into long-term plans or commitments, which can really scare people. So operating without a plan is malpractice in business, complete malpractice. So if they're not wanting to make long-term commitments, I can understand that. Got to leave flexibility and options, and do smaller experiments. But the truth is, the next year is fairly predictable. The economy is going to be slower, cash will be tighter, and you're going to have to hustle more to get the business. And how it, I'll give one more example. One of our clients in the beauty business is looking at acquisitions. And what we're saying is go and continue to explore those acquisitions, because you may or may not do them in the short term. But if you can get a deal that you can live with the worst case scenario of, you would still do the deal, but you might not. But the main thing is explore it, look at it, crunch the numbers, get some other perspectives and advice. But in the beauty business, there will be locations that come up now that have not been available in 20 years and might not be available for 20 more. So we have to keep pushing, but everything's done with exit plans, back doors, or backup plans to be able to do it. Any other questions? Anything else? Yeah, a quote here from Dan. Someone who does not want to plan is planning to fail. Fail to plan is planning to fail is the quote. I forget who that is. But you just need to have flexibility. All right, if there's any other questions, I will take them. Not a lot of questions today, which is no problem. And we get to be done early, which is awesome. All right, so if you have any other questions,